Welcome back to She is a Leader, the podcast where we dive deep into real stories behind women who are redefining leadership on their own terms. If you ever felt like you are carrying the weight of your own business or wondered how to break free from the constant hustle, today's episode is for you. Our guest, Melissa Aarskaug, and I'm going to have to ask her on the episode if I actually pronounced that right. It is a really interesting spelling. I'm going to have to ask her where that name comes from. She is a visionary in cybersecurity and technology, fellow nerd right there, and the founder of Executive Connect Experiences. And her journey isn't just about building a business, it's about reinventing herself, overcoming burnout, and learning how to lead with intention instead of exhaustion. In this conversation, Melissa opens up about the pivotal moments that changed everything, the habits and systems that helped her reclaim her freedom, and the mindset shifts that allowed her to thrive as both a leader and a mom of 4. Stay tuned because Melissa's story is packed with honest lessons, practical wisdom, and the kind of inspiration that will have you rethink what's possible for your own leadership journey. So let me officially introduce you to Melissa Aarskaug. She's an executive in cybersecurity and technology field, the visionary founder of Executive Connect Experiences and co-author of The Renaissance, Redefining Success for Modern Mavericks. She created Executive Connect Experiences as a purpose-driven platform to help executives, founders, and ambitional professionals grow and scale their impact. As host of the Executive Connect podcast, Melissa curates conversations with C-suite leaders, innovators, and changemakers, exploring the intersection of business strategy, personal growth, and reinvention. Through her work, she fosters meaningful connections, resilience, and bold transformation while bringing a unique perspective shaped by her career in technology, security, and leadership. Now, for everybody listening in, we also just realized we are both in the same city right now. Gotta love the nomading style. Melissa, welcome so much to the episode. If I would have known that, we could have recorded in person.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today and your listeners.
Now, tell me, the spelling of your last name is really interesting. Do you know the story behind it, where it comes from?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. It's Aarskaug, pronounced Aarskaug, and I am Norwegian, but I am also a little bit German myself. So thank you so much for asking to pronounce it. It rarely gets pronounced correctly.
And it's, for me specifically, it's like, okay, am I using my European pronunciation, the English one? It's always quite interesting. And the Norwegian heritage explains the extra letters in there. Norwegian language has quite an interesting spelling. And I'm curious. Let's start from the beginning. Take me back for a second to that moment, what first inspired you to create your Executive Connect experience. What happened in your life at that point? What got you started? What was that moment of, this is what the world needs?
Yeah, for me, it was, I often ran that narrative, leaders or readers. And so if I read enough books, I would know enough to be a leader. And so I started the podcast because I realized the best leadership lessons did not come from the books. They came from conversations with people actually building things. And I learned that the more I kept reading books, I felt like I didn't fit in any of these books. I was very young in my career and leadership. I was very young in rooms that I didn't fit. And there wasn't a lot about, burnout and mindset and what I was going through as, a young woman in a very powerful male-dominated field. And so I was in rooms where I had to learn really quick on the fly, and fast. And so why I created Executive Connect was to share, tips and tricks and tidbits with people, from people that actually are doing big things in our world.
Now, I think we all know burnout. We all have experienced burnout, and many leaders just simply face burnout. I'm curious, for you, how did your burnout look and feel like for you? And how did you know it was time for a change?
Yeah, I think, it was a couple of things. As a high functioning person, an ambitious person, a strategic person, engineering person, we tend to have a lot of, I have a lot of tabs open, as I call it. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but I have a lot of tabs open always. And so I'm really functioning in all of those tabs every day. And I'm expending a lot of energy making sure I've checked all the boxes, done all the top things for every one of those tabs. And I think, it wasn't until my son, I was probably in my 30s when I realized how much I was functioning on a detox, retox, rest, repeat cycle. And it really came from the people I love. I'd be having these dialogues and I'd be like, yeah. And then they'd ask me a question. I had no idea what they were saying. And I realized I was still working and living in all these tabs and not really present and mindful. And here's the kicker about that. I've been a longtime practitioner of yoga and mindfulness. And so when I was in these tabs all day, I wasn't practicing the skills I knew really well, which is being present and mindful of my surroundings. And it really just became something that, was the hustle culture. I was running on this hamster wheel every day, all the time. And it wasn't until I got off that hamster wheel that I realized I needed to change who I was becoming.
I use the same phrasing with all the tabs open, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's interesting. At one point, I tried microdosing. At times, I still do microdosing. And I think that was the first time in my life having to make it to 34 to only have one tab open and one voice in my head. That was the first ever experience where I'm like, this is how quote normal people's brain works, because it's like, it feels like I have 10,000 tabs open at any given time, right? It's like problem solving over here and we still need to do this. And my brain is literally multitasking at the same time. And we still have something in the subconscious it's figuring out right now. So I'm like, yes, I so hear you when you say it's like I have all of these tabs open and oh my God, do I hear you on that. Now, with your journey in the burnout and stepping away from the hustle culture a little bit, you seem to be just as passionate about what you were doing as I am. What were your first steps to be able to step away, to probably, I'm assuming, reprogramming how you look at things, how you perceive things, how you do things, and stepping away from some of the passion and slowing down and being more in the moment and being more mindful? How did you start that change?
I think leadership looks really glamorous on the outside, but most of the time it's just making the hard decisions with incomplete information. And so what I realized is I was doing so many things for people or companies that didn't value me, didn't appreciate me. I had people that I was doing a lot of problem solving for them. And I just took a step back and I said, do these people appreciate me and respect me, value me even being here? And then really focused on redefining what I wanted my life to look like and who I wanted to be in my life. And then reallocating the time appropriately. Like I was volunteering for, different communities where I was just another body there. Nobody really knew who I was. And so I'm like, maybe I can repurpose that time, with a podcast or with writing a book or with different workshops I was putting on. So I pulled back and looked at all the people in my life. Are they respecting me the same way I'm respecting them? And is there a give take in this relationship? And I realized when I literally put all these people's names down on paper, I took back some of my energy that I was putting out. And I leverage my intuition to do that. Some of the people I can't change, family members or people I work with and my jobs, but I could put boundaries around those relationships, and I could, really control my reaction to the behaviors.
With that, how has your approach to leadership evolved and changed as your business grows, as your family has grown, as your circles change? How has that changed your approach to leadership or how you see it?
I would say my entire life, I have been very underestimated, which has been actually a benefit for me. Whether it was school or sports or being very young in my career for a lot of my roles, I think it helped me get where I needed to get and not behave in a way that was either entitled or over assuming in different ways. And so I took that as a win. And I've been able to see how leaders behave under pressure a lot in my career. I've worked in banking very young, in civil engineering very young, in regulated industries, casino gambling, cybersecurity. And throughout all these different changes I have been through or I have had in my life, relationships drive everything. I think a lot of times people, I don't know about you, but my inbox, there's not a single day that goes by that I don't have at least 10 people asking me for something in my inbox. And I don't even know who they are. They're either asking me for a contact to be on the podcast or a favor or, whatever, but I have no idea who they are. Right. And so my propensity to help people is I always do that because of the nature of who I am. But it's one thing to help somebody, and it's a whole nother thing to exist in relationships that are transactional. And one of the things I love about interviewing executives in almost every sector that there is that almost every great leader has had a moment where they stop trying to prove themselves and start focusing on building others up. And those are, back to what I was saying, relationships drive everything.
Now, looking back at your growth, the changes, the lesson, what's one mistake or misconception about leadership that you have unlearned along the way? Something that might have been like, oh my God, this is the pinnacle of leadership, or this is what we perceive leadership to be, or this is how a leader is supposed to look like. Is there one misconception or mistake that you would say, yeah, that definitely was an unlearning on my way, or is just falsely talked about or marketed out there?
Yeah, and I think this is such a generic answer, and I'm sure so many people have had the same answer, but that leaders have to know everything. And the one thing that surprised me in my career as I progressed through leadership is it looked very different from the inside than it did from the outside. So from the outside, it looked like confidence and certainty and knowing everything to do. But from the inside, it often looked like I was making hard decisions with incomplete information and carrying the responsibility for outcomes that had affected a whole lot of people and their lives. So that realization changed how I viewed leadership. It's less about having all the answers and more about having the courage to move forward when answers aren't always obvious. And they're not obvious, especially even more in a world that's constantly changing and evolving. If we look at where we are early in this year, there's been so many changes for every single person on this planet, politically, culturally, business-wise, and we're all just kind of moving through these changes every single day. So we all have more in common than we think.
Ain't that the truth? And it's only, we're barely at the end of the first quarter, and it already feels like I've been a century in this year. With not having all of the answers, with delegating work, with working with the team, with letting go. Are you one of the lucky ones that it was really easy to just, quote, let go of having to know everything, having to do everything yourself? Or have you struggled with that piece of, okay, I'm like, you raised children too. I don't have any, but I kind of assume children are similar to with our business of, okay, I've raised you. I gave you all the knowledge I can do. And now I need to set you free and let you go out in the world and fight for yourself. I kind of like hear parents talk about this with their children when they're sending off the kids to college or later on, where it's kind of like the letting go and trusting we did well. And I kind of feel like we go through with the business too when we come to a specific level of scaling, when the business grows to a certain point where I don't think we can do everything, not that we even should do everything. How did you work with that?
I would say nothing in my life has been easy. It's been a lot of struggle. It's been a lot of change. It's been a lot of reinventing, which is why I wrote the book. Oftentimes, people are like, it seems so easy for you, but it's not. But for me, through all the struggle came strength. And because I was taking the lessons that I was learning, and all of us are going to have struggle and setbacks in our life. Now, whether we take 10 steps back or 1 step back, it's really a function of risk. It's a risk function. For me, I've always been comfortable taking steps back, but it's because I was always guided by my instincts and my intuition. So, when I left in civil engineering to get into the casino gaming industry, I took a 70% pay cut. And I was working before as a engineer on one of the largest bridge projects in the United States at the time. And when I told my friends and my family what I was doing, they're like, have you lost your mind? You have a dual engineering degree and you're going to go into an industry that nobody, have zero skills. I literally had no skills for the role. Like when you look at the job description, I think the only thing that I complied with is I was able to travel, I had a college degree and, I was good communicating with people and had some, skills in that capacity. And so, I was comfortable taking a risk. And so I stepped back, I would say a big couple of step backs. And it was a struggle because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. And I think that's the answer is realizing, the more we struggle and the bigger the struggle is, the more we gain strength out of it, right? So if you're willing to, go through the tough relationships, make the bad mistakes and learn from them, what's on the other side of that is better than we can even realize. And I think about every major struggle I've had in my life, all of them. Something greater and more grandiose has come from everything that I've been through. And I believe part of that is not just a mindset, piece that a lot of people will say. I think it's how I learned from the mistakes I was making, right? And whether that was dating the wrong type of man, and I had to learn that a couple times, or, working for the wrong boss, and I had to learn that a couple times, or hanging out with the wrong friends. After a while, you start to realize who you do want to be around, what you do stand for, what you're willing to give up. And for me, I'm just not willing to not have joy every day. It's something I will not compromise. I walked away from a very large salaried job last year because it wasn't joyful anymore. And the people I was working around were, not joyful people. They were not good people in my perspective. And so I stepped away, and so many people are like, I can't believe you did that. But my values and my joy will not be compromised because I know my worth and I know what I'm building and who I'm building it for. I'm grounded in clarity and I'm grounded in legacy. And I have all these skill sets that I've taken with me year over year over year. A lot of people say to me quite a lot, oh my gosh, well, you're leaving a job and you don't have any skills. I'm like, what are you talking about? I have so many skills, whether it's banking or engineering, that I'm bringing into the next role. They might be a little bit different, but people and companies cannot take away what you know and who you've become in the process.
Oh my God, there is so much in there because number one, I believe it's somewhat of a trust in self where, yes, friends and family, they always want us safe. Don't get me wrong. There's often feedback we get of, oh my God, you were doing what? Because they want us safe, right? They want to take care of us. Doesn't mean they are right or wrong. It just is. And us just simply being able to trust, number one, my intuition. This is something I want to do. This is something that aligns with me. Number two, if for whatever reason, throughout the process of doing the thing, I find out that it doesn't align with my values or my values change or their values change, then I have the knowledge and the strength to, again, do something different. But I'm never going to know if I want something different if I don't do it. So the self-trust of, yeah, I can manage this, done it before, we'll do it again, is just a strength and a trust in ourselves that's like, yeah, cool, let's try this. Let's just do, rather than just being stuck in my head of, do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? Let's do it because I can handle whatever the universe throws at me. And I think that's what I see in so many women that are in leadership, that are entrepreneurs, that are just doing. We either way had it or we have developed this trust of, you know what, life happens. Shit is going to hit the fan no matter what I do. I better enjoy the journey because I know I can handle whatever the universe throws at me. Which brings me to my question of, for any woman that is listening right now that is feeling stuck or feeling overwhelmed or things are just not right or just in this state. And yes, if you're just listening to the podcast, you really should be watching it because my faces are always priceless. For any of those women that are listening, that are in it right now, that are in the shit show, that feel stuck and overwhelmed, do you have a piece of advice or encouragement you could offer them for the journey, in their own journey they're in right now, being in the shit show?
I think, look, everybody gets stuck in their life. Like none of us are, I don't know anybody that would say in my life, I haven't been stuck in a situation. I think fear is normal at every single level, whether you're a child or a mid-level career, executive or leader or, CEO of a company. Executives don't eliminate fear. They just move that fear. So if you're stuck, you need to move your fear. So what is stuck? I think it's like, I fear that if I make the decision, I won't, have enough money to feed my kids. Or if I make that decision, I, won't know anybody in that state or whatever the fear is. But being stuck is really just not addressing your fear. And courage is action before certainty. So you have to take a step, any step, to get unstuck. It doesn't matter what the step is. So if it's, I want to get better at whatever it is, you have take a class, ask somebody who's been there. That's a step. And then the next step and the next step and the next step. But movement is super important to get unstuck. You're going to stay stuck in the cement unless you move. If you don't move, your feet are going to be stuck. And there's always, excuses. I can't do it because of my husband or my children or my boss or my mom or whatever the excuses are. You need to step out of the excuses and start solving your own problems. And to your point, nobody's coming to save you. You have people that will help you along your journey and they're going to support you, but nobody can actually do it for you. It's the same thing. Back to, you mentioned my children. I have to teach them to take their own steps and I have to help guide them in their journey. And it's the same way as we become adults. We get stuck because of fear, and we get stuck because of past experiences. And, oh my gosh, I tried this one thing one time, or I started this business and it failed, so I can't start another business. Well, the difference between the successful entrepreneurs and the ones that are not are the ones that are successful have probably made a lot more mistakes. And maybe there's a couple who have been successful, and those are, one in millions, but you have to make the mistakes and to get unstuck.
Yeah, what I always say is you can't solve the problem where it's generated. So if we're stuck in our thinking and trying to figure it out, you can run circles in your damn head till you just finally do, because you're not going to get answers. You're not going to get this works, this doesn't work, till you just do. And with that, thank you everybody for joining us today for this powerful conversation with Melissa. And if her story resonated with you, if you saw yourself in her struggles, her learnings, and you found hope in her transformation, know that you are not alone. Leadership isn't about doing it all. It's about building a life and a business that supports who you truly are. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and share it with another woman who is ready to step into her own version of leadership. And remember, your story, your systems, and your mindset are the keys to creating the freedom you deserve. Until next time, keep leading with courage and curiosity. Bye, everybody.